I'm Jennifer Walsh, and I'm 36 years old. Last Christmas, my sister kidnapped my 5-year-old daughter Emma and held her hostage until I agreed to give her $47,000 for her husband's gambling debts, and what happened next destroyed our family forever. The phone call came at 2:47 p.m. on December 23rd, my sister Rachel's voice artificially sweet as she delivered the ultimatum that would change everything. Emma's safe with me, Jen, but she's not coming home until you transfer the money we discussed. Your choice, your daughter's Christmas morning or your precious savings account. Before I tell you how I exposed her elaborate manipulation scheme in front of our entire extended family at Christmas dinner, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button. If you've ever had family members use your children as pawns in their financial games, this story will show you exactly how to fight back and protect what matters most. Growing up as the eldest daughter in the Henderson family meant carrying responsibilities that should never have belonged to a child. Our house at 1247 Maple Street in suburban Cleveland looked picture perfect from the outside, with its manicured lawn and white picket fence. But inside, the dynamics were severely warped by my parents' desperate need to maintain appearances while enabling my younger sister Rachel's destructive patterns. My earliest memory of the family hierarchy was when I was 8 years old and Rachel was 6. She had broken Mom's favorite vase while throwing a tantrum about not getting a toy she wanted at the store. Instead of facing consequences, Rachel cried until Mom comforted her while I was assigned the task of cleaning up the broken pieces and explaining to visitors why the living room looked different. Jennifer is so responsible, Mom would tell anyone who asked. She always helps take care of things when Rachel gets overwhelmed. This pattern repeated itself throughout our childhood with increasing complexity and cost. When Rachel crashed her bike because she refused to wear the helmet I'd reminded her to put on, I was blamed for not watching her carefully enough. When she failed her math tests because she spent homework time playing video games, I was expected to tutor her every evening after finishing my own advanced coursework. The message was always clear. Rachel's struggles were everyone else's responsibility to fix, while my successes were simply expected. By high school, the financial implications of this dynamic became impossible to ignore. Rachel wanted to join the expensive cheerleading squad, so my part-time job earnings from working at the local grocery store were redirected to cover her uniform and camp fees. When she crashed Dad's car during her junior year, my college savings fund was rated to cover the insurance deductible and repairs. Each sacrifice was presented as temporary family teamwork, but the money never returned and my opportunities steadily diminished to fund Rachel's choices. You're naturally smart, Jennifer, Dad would explain when I questioned why my college fund was repeatedly depleted for Rachel's activities. You'll find a way to make things work. Rachel needs more support to reach her potential. This philosophy guided every family financial decision throughout our teenage years, creating a system where my achievements were minimized while Rachel's failures were cushioned with increasingly expensive interventions. Despite these obstacles, I managed to earn a partial scholarship to Ohio State University, where I studied accounting with fierce determination to create financial independence for myself. My college years were marked by constant work-study jobs and careful budgeting, while Rachel's college experience was fully funded by our parents, who took out second mortgages and depleted their retirement savings to pay for her private university education in communications. The irony wasn't lost on me that Rachel's expensive education led nowhere professionally, while my practical degree and work ethic quickly established me in a stable career at Morrison and Associates, a mid-sized accounting firm in downtown Cleveland. By age 25, I had purchased my own small house and was building the secure life I dreamed of throughout my scholarship-dependent college years. It was during this period of growing independence that I met David Walsh at a professional development conference in Columbus. David was a project manager for a construction company, and his steady presence and genuine interest in my goals felt like a revelation after years of family dynamics where my needs were always secondary. We dated for 18 months before marrying in a simple ceremony that my parents attended with visible reluctance, clearly disappointed that I hadn't chosen someone more financially prominent to potentially support the family. Rachel, meanwhile, had married Trevor Morrison during her senior year of college, a charming but unreliable man whose family connections had initially impressed our parents. Trevor's father owned a small chain of appliance stores, leading everyone to assume Trevor would inherit a prosperous business. What became apparent only after their wedding was that Trevor had no interest in working in the family business and preferred spending his time at casinos and racetracks, funding his gambling habit with credit cards and family loans. When Emma was born 3 years ago, I finally understood what unconditional love felt like. Holding my daughter for the first time, I made a silent promise that she would never experience the conditional affection and financial manipulation that had defined my childhood. David and I created a household based on stability, consistency, and genuine emotional support, everything I'd longed for growing up. Our peaceful life was regularly disrupted by family crises centered around Rachel and Trevor's financial disasters. There was the failed restaurant investment that cost them $30,000 in borrowed money, the get-rich-quick cryptocurrency scheme that depleted Trevor's inheritance from his grandmother, the MLM business opportunity that required thousands in upfront inventory that never sold. Each venture was presented with great enthusiasm and promises of quick profits, followed inevitably by emergency calls requesting family bailouts. "You know we're good for it, Jen," Rachel would say during these crisis calls, her voice mixing desperation with entitlement. "Trevor just needs one good break and we'll pay everyone back with interest. You're doing so well with your accounting business, couldn't you help us bridge this gap?" These requests always came with emotional manipulation about family loyalty and guilt about my comparative financial stability. My parents consistently enabled these patterns, viewing Rachel's financial crises as temporary setbacks rather than consequences of poor decision-making. They refinanced their house twice to fund Trevor's business ventures, depleted their retirement accounts to cover Rachel's credit card debts, and eventually moved into a smaller apartment when their mortgage payments became unmanageable. Throughout these sacrifices, I was regularly pressured to contribute to the family's financial support system. "Your sister is going through a rough patch," Mom would explain during our weekly phone calls, her voice heavy with worry and barely concealed expectation. "She and Trevor are working so hard to get back on their feet. It would mean everything if you could help them with just this one emergency." The emergencies were never isolated incidents, but part of an ongoing pattern of financial irresponsibility cushioned by family enablement. David and I established firm boundaries about family financial assistance, agreeing to help with legitimate emergencies but refusing to fund Trevor's gambling habit or Rachel's shopping addiction. This decision created tension during family gatherings, where my reluctance to contribute was interpreted as selfishness rather than self-preservation. "Jennifer has always been tight with money," Rachel would comment loudly during holiday dinners, her tone suggesting this was a character flaw rather than responsible financial management. The breaking point came last October when Rachel called me sobbing about Trevor's latest gambling debt crisis. He owed $47,000 to various creditors and bookmakers, with threats of legal action and worse if the money wasn't paid immediately. "I'm scared, Jen," Rachel cried into the phone. "These people aren't just going to take our house, they're talking about hurting Trevor, hurting me. We need your help. You're the only one with that kind of money available." The amount was staggering, more than half of the emergency fund David and I had carefully built over 5 years of marriage. When I explained that I couldn't liquidate our savings to cover Trevor's gambling debts, Rachel's desperation turned to anger. "So you'll just let your own sister lose everything because you're too selfish to help family?" she shouted. "Emma deserves to know what kind of person her mother really is, someone who abandons family when they need her most." That threat should have been a warning sign, but I was too focused on managing my own guilt and maintaining boundaries to recognize how dangerous Rachel's desperation had become. I offered to help them find credit counseling services and explore legal options for dealing with Trevor's debts, but I refused to hand over our family's financial security to fund his gambling addiction. The harassment began immediately after that conversation. Daily phone calls from Rachel, crying about new threats from creditors, text messages with photos of foreclosure notices and legal documents, voicemails from my parents expressing disappointment in my unwillingness to help during a family crisis. The psychological pressure was relentless and designed to wear down my resistance through guilt and fear. "Your sister is having panic attacks every day," Mom reported during one particularly manipulative phone call. "Your father and I gave everything we had to help, but it wasn't enough. She keeps asking why her own sister won't save her when she has the means to do it. How do I answer that question, Jennifer?" 2 weeks before Christmas, the tactics escalated beyond emotional manipulation into something much more sinister. Rachel began showing up unannounced at Emma's daycare during pickup time, chatting with the teachers and establishing herself as a familiar presence. She volunteered to babysit when David and I had work commitments, insisting it would help her feel useful during her financial crisis while giving us free childcare. "Aunt Rachel has been so helpful lately," Emma mentioned during dinner one evening, her 5-year-old voice innocent of the manipulation surrounding her. "She says she might take me on a special adventure soon, just the two of us." The comment made my stomach clench with unease, but I dismissed my concerns as paranoia generated by the ongoing family tension. December 23rd started like any other holiday preparation day. David was at work finishing a project deadline before the Christmas break, while I handled last-minute shopping and food preparation for our Christmas Eve celebration. Emma was excited about Santa's visit and chattered constantly about her wish list and Christmas morning plans. At 1:30 p.m., I dropped Emma off at Rachel's apartment for what was supposed to be a 2-hour playdate with her cousin Tyler while I finished wrapping presents. Rachel seemed unusually cheerful, almost manic in her enthusiasm about spending time with Emma. "Take all the time you need, Jen," she said, hugging Emma tightly. "We're going to have so much fun together." By 3:45 p.m., when I returned to pick up Emma, the apartment was empty. No answer to my knocking, no response to phone calls, no note explaining where they had gone. Trevor's car was missing from the parking lot, and neighbors said they'd seen Rachel loading Emma into the vehicle around 2:30 p.m. with suitcases and what looked like overnight bags. The phone call came 15 minutes later while I was driving frantically around the neighborhood searching for any sign of them. Rachel's voice was artificially calm, almost businesslike in its tone. "Emma's safe, Jen. She's having a wonderful time and she's going to have an amazing Christmas as long as you make the right choice." "What choice?" I demanded, my hands shaking as I pulled over to focus on the conversation. "Where is my daughter, Rachel? Bring her home right now." "She's somewhere safe, having fun with Uncle Trevor," Rachel replied, her tone suggesting this was a reasonable arrangement rather than kidnapping. "But she won't be coming home for Christmas unless you transfer $47,000 to the account I'm sending you. Consider it a Christmas gift to save your sister's life and give Emma the best Christmas present ever, knowing her mommy chose family over money." The psychological manipulation was sophisticated and devastating. Rachel had turned my love for Emma into a weapon against my financial boundaries, knowing that no amount of money would matter if my daughter was in danger. The threat was implicit but clear. Emma's safety and Christmas morning depended on my compliance with financial demands I'd previously refused. "You can't be serious," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. "Rachel, this is kidnapping. This is a felony. You're talking about holding my child hostage for money." "I'm talking about family helping family," she replied, her tone hardening with familiar entitlement. "Emma is with people who love her, people who want to give her a magical Christmas, but that can only happen if you stop being selfish and help us solve this crisis. The choice is yours, Jennifer, money or Emma's Christmas morning." The call ended with instructions to transfer the money within 6 hours if I wanted Emma home for Christmas Eve. No negotiation, no alternative arrangements, no consideration for the fact that Rachel was describing felony kidnapping as family cooperation. The message was clear: comply with financial demands or lose Christmas with my daughter. My first instinct was to call the police immediately, but Rachel's follow-up text message contained photos of Emma laughing and playing, looking safe and happy. "She's having such a good time," the message read. "It would be terrible to ruin this fun with police drama. Just send the money and everyone gets their perfect Christmas." The psychological torture was exquisite in its cruelty. Rachel had created a situation where protecting my daughter required either financial surrender or risking her immediate safety by involving law enforcement. The photos showed Emma unaware of being used as a pawn, genuinely enjoying time with adults she trusted, making any rescue attempt potentially traumatic for her. David rushed home when I called him, sobbing about Emma's disappearance. Together, we analyzed our options with the clarity that comes from desperation and parental instinct. Calling the police was necessary, but risky. Rachel had clearly planned this carefully and might escalate if cornered. Paying the ransom would encourage future blackmail and teach Emma that love could be purchased through financial surrender. "We need evidence," David said, his project management training evident in his systematic approach to the crisis. "Documentation of the kidnapping, proof of the financial demands, witness statements about Rachel's behavior. We can't just accuse family members of felony crimes without building a solid case." Over the next 4 hours, while my daughter remained missing and Christmas Eve approached, we gathered evidence of Rachel's systematic manipulation and criminal behavior. Screenshots of her threatening text messages, voicemail recordings of her ransom demands, witness statements from daycare teachers about her suspicious behavior around Emma. The most damning evidence came from Trevor's gambling associates, who confirmed that he owed significant money to dangerous people with Christmas deadline threats. Rachel's desperation wasn't fabricated, it was real and dangerous, making her willingness to use Emma as collateral even more disturbing. At 8:17 p.m., as we prepared to contact the police despite the risks, Rachel called with a modification to her demands. "I know you're thinking about calling the cops," she said, her voice tight with stress, "but Emma's having such a good time and she's so excited about the special Christmas surprise we planned, it would break her little heart to cut this short." "Bring her home, Rachel," I demanded, my voice steady despite my terror. "This ends now. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." "The only line that matters is the one between family loyalty and selfishness," she replied. "Emma will be at Christmas dinner tomorrow at Mom and Dad's house, assuming you've made the right choice. If not, she'll be spending Christmas with people who understand the meaning of family sacrifice." The threat was clear: submit to financial blackmail in front of the entire extended family, or lose Christmas with my daughter while everyone watched. Rachel had escalated from private manipulation to public humiliation, using our traditional family gathering as the stage for her extortion scheme. Christmas Eve passed without Emma, the longest night of my life spent alternating between grief and rage while David and I finalized our response plan. We would attend Christmas dinner with evidence of Rachel's crimes, expose her manipulation in front of the entire family, and demand Emma's immediate return before involving law enforcement. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold, with freezing rain coating the streets of Cleveland in a thin layer of ice that matched my emotional state. The drive to my parents' house at 1247 Maple Street felt surreal, like traveling to my own execution while carrying the evidence that would either save my daughter or destroy what remained of my family. The familiar smell of my mother's Christmas ham and cinnamon rolls greeted us as we entered through the back door, carrying wrapped presents that might never be opened and smiles that felt like masks over our terror. 22 family members had gathered for the celebration, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends who attended every year. Emma was sitting at the children's table in the living room, wearing a new dress I'd never seen and playing with toys that weren't from our house. She looked up when I entered, her face lighting up with innocent joy. "Mommy, Daddy, look at all the presents Aunt Rachel gave me." She said Santa came early to her house. The manipulation was breathtaking in its psychological sophistication. Rachel had positioned herself as the magical Christmas provider while making me appear neglectful for not bringing equal gifts. Emma's genuine happiness at seeing her extended family contrasted sharply with my knowledge that she'd been kidnapped and held hostage, creating cognitive dissonance that made action feel impossible. "Jennifer, David, you're here?" Mom exclaimed, embracing us with relief that seemed genuine. "Emma has been telling everyone about her special sleepover with Aunt Rachel. What a wonderful way to kick off Christmas week." The family had been told that Emma's overnight stay was a planned arrangement, a special aunt-niece bonding experience that explained her absence from Christmas Eve at our house. Rachel had created a narrative that made her appear generous while concealing the criminal nature of her actions. Rachel sat near the head of the dining room table, wearing a red dress that complemented her artificially cheerful demeanor. She looked relaxed and confident, occasionally glancing at me with expressions that mixed triumph with warning. The message in her eyes was clear: play along with the family narrative or face consequences that would extend beyond Christmas. "Emma had such a wonderful time with Aunt Rachel," she announced to the table during dinner service, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. She kept saying how excited she was to have such a special Christmas adventure. "It's amazing what family can do for each other when everyone works together." The veiled threat was obvious to me but invisible to everyone else, who interpreted her comments as holiday cheerfulness rather than criminal gloating. Emma nodded enthusiastically, still unaware that her Christmas adventure had been hostage-taking disguised as family fun. "Rachel, that was so generous of you to give Emma such special attention," Aunt Patricia commented from across the table. "She's been glowing all morning, talking about all the fun activities you planned. You've always been such a loving aunt." As the afternoon progressed, I waited for the right moment to expose Rachel's manipulation and demand accountability. The extended family was all present, witnesses who could testify to what they heard and saw. Emma was safe and surrounded by people who loved her, reducing the risk of trauma from the confrontation that had to come. The opportunity arrived during dessert service, when Uncle Mike raised his wine glass for the traditional Christmas toast about family loyalty and love. "To the Henderson family," he began, his voice warm with holiday sentiment. "Another year of supporting each other through thick and thin, proving that blood really is thicker than water." "Actually, Uncle Mike," I said, standing up with my phone in hand containing screenshots of Rachel's threatening messages, "I'd like to talk about what family support really means and what it doesn't include." The room fell silent as conversations stopped and 22 pairs of eyes focused on me. Emma looked up from her ice cream with curiosity rather than concern, still protected by childhood innocence from understanding the adult drama surrounding her. "Rachel, would you like to explain to everyone how you supported family this week?" I asked, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. "Specifically, how you took Emma from my house yesterday and refused to return her until I paid you $47,000. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as family members exchanged confused glances. Rachel's confident expression flickered briefly before settling into defensive defiance. "I don't know what you're talking about, Jennifer," she replied, her voice carrying wounded innocence. "Emma and I had a wonderful sleepover that we both enjoyed. If you have a problem with family bonding time, maybe you should examine your own priorities." "Family bonding time?" I repeated, pulling up the threatening text messages on my phone. "Is that what you call it when you take someone's child without permission and demand ransom money for their return?" I began reading Rachel's messages aloud, my voice growing stronger with each damning piece of evidence. Emma's safe with me, but she's not coming home until you transfer the money we discussed. Your choice, your daughter's Christmas morning or your precious savings account. The words landed like physical blows around the dinner table. Grandmother Henderson gasped audibly while Uncle Mike's wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Emma continued eating her ice cream, protected by childhood's inability to understand the implications of adult conversations. Jennifer, what are you saying? Mom asked, her voice trembling with confusion and growing alarm. Rachel would never, this must be some kind of misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I replied, showing the timestamp on Rachel's messages. She took Emma from my house at 2:30 p.m. yesterday, drove her to an undisclosed location, and called me with ransom demands. She held my daughter hostage until I agreed to pay Trevor's gambling debts. Dad's face had gone completely white as he stared at Rachel, who was shifting between defensive anger and desperate justification. Rachel, he said quietly, his voice carrying decades of parental authority, is this true? It's not what it sounds like, Rachel protested, her artificial cheerfulness cracking under the weight of family scrutiny. I was trying to help everyone have a better Christmas. Emma was safe and happy, and Jennifer just needed to understand the importance of family helping family during crisis situations. By kidnapping my child, I shot back, my maternal instincts overriding any remaining politeness. By holding her hostage until I paid your husband's gambling debts, that's not family help, Rachel, that's felony kidnapping and extortion. Uncle Mike set down his wine glass with a sharp clink against the table. Rachel, please tell me Jennifer is exaggerating. Please tell me you didn't actually take Emma without permission and demand money for her return. The silence stretched unbearably as Rachel realized her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling in front of the entire family. Her confident demeanor dissolved into desperate defensiveness as 21 relatives stared at her with growing horror and disbelief. Everyone's acting like I'm some kind of criminal, Rachel said, her voice rising with familiar victim positioning. I love Emma, I would never hurt her, I was trying to solve a family crisis in a way that worked for everyone. Jennifer has the money to help and Emma got to have a special Christmas experience. You kidnapped her, Cousin Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. You took someone's child and held them for ransom money. That's not love, Rachel, that's using a baby as a weapon. Trevor, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, suddenly stood up from the table. This is getting blown out of proportion, he said, his voice slurred from holiday drinking. Emma had fun, nobody got hurt, and we're all family here. Can't we just work this out privately without all the drama? The drama started when you racked up $47,000 in gambling debts and decided my daughter should pay the price, I replied, turning to face him directly. The drama escalated when your wife decided kidnapping was an acceptable solution to your financial irresponsibility. Grandmother Henderson's voice cut through the rising tension with sharp authority. Rachel Marie Henderson Morrison, look at me right now. Her tone carried the weight of matriarchal power that had commanded respect for 8 decades. Rachel turned toward her grandmother reluctantly, her defiance wilting under the older woman's steely gaze. Did you take that baby away from her parents without permission? Grandmother asked, her voice deceptively quiet. It wasn't kidnapping, Rachel protested weakly. Emma knows me, she trusts me, I'm her aunt. I was keeping her safe while trying to solve a family problem. From her own parents? Grandmother's voice rose to a volume that commanded attention from every corner of the room. You stole someone's child and demanded money for their return. In my day, we had a word for people who did that, criminals. The condemnation from the family matriarch carried more weight than any legal judgment could have. Around the table, relatives who had initially seemed confused were now openly staring at Rachel with disgust and disbelief. Mom, you don't understand, Rachel tried desperately. Trevor owes money to dangerous people, they were threatening us, I was trying to protect everyone by solving the problem quickly. By traumatizing a 5-year-old child? Aunt Patricia demanded, her voice shaking with anger. By turning Christmas into a hostage situation? Rachel, how could you think that was acceptable? Emma, finally sensing the adult tension around her, began to look worried. Mommy, why is everyone upset? She asked, her small voice cutting through the heated conversation. Did I do something wrong? I immediately knelt beside her chair, wrapping my arms around her small body. No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. The adults are having a disagreement about grown-up things. You're perfect and you're safe now. Rachel's face crumpled as she watched me comfort the child she'd used as a pawn in her extortion scheme. Emma, tell everyone how much fun we had together, she pleaded desperately. Tell them about the special games we played and the presents I gave you. Rachel, stop, Dad commanded, his voice carrying an authority I'd rarely heard from him. Do not involve that child in your justifications. What you did was wrong, and trying to use Emma's innocent enjoyment to excuse it makes it worse. The room erupted into multiple conversations as family members processed the revelation and chose sides. Some relatives defended Rachel, arguing that family crises required desperate measures. Others expressed outrage at using a child as collateral in adult financial disputes. "I think we need to call the police," Uncle Mike said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "If what Jennifer is saying is true, serious crimes have been committed here. Family loyalty doesn't extend to covering up kidnapping and extortion." "It wasn't kidnapping," Rachel screamed, her composure finally shattering completely. "I'm her aunt, I love her. I was trying to save our family from losing everything while Jennifer sits on a pile of money she could easily share. My money isn't your solution to Trevor's gambling addiction," I replied firmly. "And my daughter isn't your bargaining chip to access it. What you did was criminal regardless of your financial desperation." Trevor suddenly grabbed Rachel's arm and began pulling her toward the door. "We're leaving," he announced loudly. "This family has always been jealous of our success, and now you're all ganging up on us during the holidays." Rachel was trying to help everyone, and this is the thanks she gets. "Your success?" Cousin Sarah laughed bitterly. "Trevor, you're $47,000 in debt to bookmakers and loan sharks. You've bankrupted your wife's family and destroyed your marriage. What exactly do you consider successful about that situation?" As Rachel and Trevor rushed toward the exit, I called after them. "The police report gets filed tomorrow morning. If you ever come near Emma again without my explicit permission, I'll have you arrested for violating the restraining order I'm requesting." The door slammed behind them, leaving 20 family members to process what had just been revealed. Emma looked around the room with wide eyes, sensing that something important had happened but unable to understand the adult complexities involved. "Mommy, can we go home now?" she asked quietly. "I want to play with my real Christmas presents." "Yes, baby," I replied, gathering her coat and the few belongings she'd brought from Rachel's house. "We're going home right now, and we're going to have the best Christmas morning ever." As we prepared to leave, Grandmother Henderson approached me with tears in her eyes. "Jennifer, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice heavy with shame and regret. "I never thought Rachel would do something like this, using a baby as a weapon. It's unforgivable." 6 months later, Emma and I were sitting in our new backyard garden, planting flowers in the raised beds David had built for us. The legal proceedings against Rachel had concluded with her pleading guilty to unlawful restraint and extortion, receiving probation and mandatory counseling in exchange for staying away from our family. "Mommy, will Aunt Rachel ever come to our house again?" Emma asked, carefully placing seeds in the prepared soil. The question had come up periodically since Christmas, usually during quiet moments when she processed the complicated adult emotions she'd witnessed. "No, sweetheart," I replied honestly. "Aunt Rachel made some very bad choices that hurt people, and she can't be around our family anymore. But that doesn't mean anything is wrong with you or that you did anything to cause the problem." Emma nodded solemnly, her 5-year-old mind working to understand concepts too complex for her developmental stage. "I liked playing with her, but I like being home with you and Daddy better," she said simply. The aftermath of Christmas Day had been swift and decisive. The police report I filed led to criminal charges against Rachel for unlawful restraint and extortion. Trevor's gambling debts caught up with him 2 weeks later, resulting in bankruptcy and divorce proceedings as Rachel finally recognized the impossibility of funding his addiction. My parents had struggled to accept Rachel's actions, initially trying to minimize the severity or suggest family mediation instead of legal consequences. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the support from extended family members who witnessed the Christmas confrontation made denial impossible. "I keep thinking we failed somehow as parents," Mom had said during one of our difficult conversations in January. "How did we raise someone capable of using a child as ransom? Where did we go wrong?" The question haunted me too, though from a different perspective. How had I failed to recognize the escalating desperation that led to Emma's kidnapping? What signs had I missed that could have prevented the trauma altogether? Dr. Rebecca Chen, the family therapist Emma and I began seeing in January, helped us process these questions without drowning in guilt or blame. "Traumatic events often feel preventable in hindsight," she explained during one of our sessions. "But you can't predict or control other people's choices to commit crimes, even when those people are family members." The therapy sessions focused on helping Emma understand what had happened in age-appropriate terms while processing my own guilt about exposing her to family dysfunction. Dr. Chen emphasized that children are remarkably resilient when provided with consistent love and honest communication about difficult situations. "Emma needs to understand that adults sometimes make bad choices, but that those choices aren't her fault and don't reflect her worth," Dr. Chen explained. "She also needs to see that her parents will protect her, even when that protection requires difficult decisions about family relationships." The financial impact of Rachel's crimes extended beyond the emotional trauma. Legal fees, therapy costs, and security measures for our home depleted much of the emergency fund Rachel had tried to extort, but the peace of mind that came from establishing clear boundaries made every expense worthwhile. Professional growth had accompanied personal healing in unexpected ways. The crisis management skills I developed during Emma's kidnapping translated into workplace competencies that impressed my supervisors at Morrison and Associates. I was promoted to senior accountant with a significant salary increase, providing financial security that reduced my vulnerability to future family manipulation. Most importantly, Emma showed no lasting trauma from her Christmas ordeal. Dr. Chen's assessments indicated normal development and healthy attachment patterns, with no signs of anxiety or behavioral changes related to the kidnapping. Children's remarkable resilience had protected her from understanding the criminal nature of Rachel's actions, leaving her with memories of fun activities rather than trauma. The extended family relationships had been permanently altered but not entirely destroyed. Grandmother Henderson and several aunts and uncles maintained regular contact, expressing ongoing support for our decision to pursue legal consequences for Rachel's actions. They understood that protecting Emma required setting boundaries that extended to criminal family members. "You did the right thing," Uncle Mike told me during Easter dinner at grandmother's house. "Family loyalty doesn't mean accepting criminal behavior. Emma needed someone to protect her, and you stepped up when it mattered most." The hardest lesson had been accepting that love alone couldn't fix family dysfunction when it crossed into criminal territory. Rachel's desperation had been genuine, her love for Emma real, but neither factor excused using a child as collateral in adult financial disputes. Some boundaries couldn't be negotiated or compromised without enabling dangerous behavior. David and I had used the experience to strengthen our own family systems and communication patterns. We'd established clear protocols for childcare arrangements, updated our legal documents to reflect protective custody arrangements, and created emergency plans for potential future family crises. The most important thing we learned, David reflected during one of our evening conversations, is that protecting Emma sometimes means protecting her from people who claim to love her. Love isn't enough if it comes with manipulation and exploitation. Emma's 5th birthday party in April had been a celebration of healing and new traditions. Instead of the large family gatherings that had historically included drama and manipulation, we'd hosted a small party with carefully chosen friends and supportive relatives. The guest list reflected our chosen family rather than biological obligations. Looking back on Christmas Day 6 months later, I felt no regret about exposing Rachel's crimes in front of the extended family. The public confrontation had been necessary to break through decades of enabling and denial that had allowed her manipulation to escalate to kidnapping. Sometimes protecting children requires dramatic action that feels uncomfortable but serves justice. Have you ever faced a situation where family members used your children as leverage in financial disputes? How did you balance family loyalty with protecting your kids from manipulation? Share your experiences in the comments below, and remember that loving your family sometimes means setting boundaries they won't like. If this story helped you recognize manipulation in your own family relationships, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences about protecting what matters most. Remember, your first responsibility is to your children's safety and well-being, not to enabling family members who cross criminal lines. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I hope it encourages anyone facing similar challenges to prioritize their children's protection over family politics. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let family members use your kids as weapons in their personal battles.